So does that strike any chords anywhere?
Yeah, most certainly it does. It certainly sounds like a person singing a spiritual.
Brilliant.
Like we just listened to a little while ago. It sounds like those real slow spirituals.
Can you give me an example?
Okay. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
You know, I know that, and it never even occurred to me. That's fantastic. But you did the da-dum on one of those.
Yes.
Sing it again.
Oh, on the tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
Yeah, right.
One only has to listen to a polka that young Delius wrote in 1885 to get some sense of how profound the change in his music would be as a result of all he experienced in Florida.
Lovely contrast.
Oh, very lyrical, Pooh.
A little pencil sketch signed by Delius in 1885 also survives. I wonder, is there any significance in the couple huddled close together in the back of the boat? Delius always said composition could not be taught, but that the only worthwhile lessons he ever had were from a church organist called Thomas Ward, who he met in Jacksonville. Mary Jane Payne, the music store where Delius and Ward first met, was close to the river on Ocean Street. Like almost everything else associated with Delius in Jacksonville, no vestige of the original still exists. I began to fear that the other people helping me in my search might not find anything either.
I found, and I think you're going to find it very interesting.
Right.
It took a lot of time going through not only the 1880 census, but the 1885 census. And Chloe is an unusual name, especially for a black. And there are only two in the 1880 census.
Right.
So you can see here's one, a Chloe Hawkins, and she's 45 and a wife. So I don't think that's going to work out. Well, this one is even less probable. We have a Chloe Williams, who is 4 years old. So I don't think that's going to work out unless your Delius was a real cradle robber. Next, I had to look at that special census that I was telling you about, the 1885 census. And this is where I think I hit pay dirt, because not only are the other two Chloes still there, but there is a third Chloe. And her family is spread over 2 pages of the census. Mm-hmm. You see, here's her father, Charles Baker.
Right.
And he's at the last of 1 page. And then here's her mother, Alice. And here is Chloe, age 17.
Perfect.
Well, the other thing that makes it even more perfect, that is on the next page of the census, we have the postmaster for Racy Point. Now, Racy Point is only a few miles from Solana Grove. So we know that this Chloe was in the general vicinity of Delius's plantation.
From the river off Solana Grove, Delius could have seen Racy Point sticking out into the river on the horizon. I checked with a local boatman. It's only about an hour away by rowing boat, even less by sail. So Delius and Chloe Baker would have had little difficulty being together, and the census reveals that there were no more than 20 other families in the area. So what about the 1900 census? Would it tell us if Chloe Baker had had a child?
In the 1900 census, here we have a Robert Baker, and there is a boy in his household named Frederick W. I looked through a lot of these census records, and Frederick is a very unusual name for a black. Also, you'll notice that Frederick is the only son that has a middle initial. The middle initials for blacks at that time period is very unusual. This is really the only one that I saw in going through the whole census for the blacks out in the countryside. So.
And so Frederick.
Now you were telling me that Delius's father's last name is.
Well, one of his middle names is Wilhelm.
Ah, right. That's
so
what
Frederick W. is a possibility.
Because I know there'd been some name changes in the Delius. What, he was had a different name at birth?
Yes, he was Fritz at birth, and
I
he
see.
did change this later. But I think it would be extraordinary.
But Chloe is nowhere to be found. The other two Chloes are still in the county, but Chloe Baker has disappeared.
How old is this Frederick W.?
That's the problem. He's 9 years old in 1900, which would give his birth as 1891. So, are the people lying about his age to support your theory that they're hiding the child? The Bakers, there are only a couple of households of them out there. We've got a lot of things going for us that might make a case for family relationship.
I'm a bit concerned that Frederick W. is very much the wrong age. Now, how can that? Is there any way of explaining that?
Well,
how, for instance, is the
census takers are noted for their mistakes. If you start looking through censuses, you'll find that they often misspell people's names. The test that they took to be a census taker was a handwriting test. It was not how clever you were, it was how clearly you wrote. And as the census taker walked down the road, taking the census, he would knock on the door and merely ask who was ever at home, who lives in this house, and what are their ages, and what are their relationships, and the other questions to fill out his form. So he would believe anything that was told him.
Right.
It was not double-checked.
For instance, if Chloe ran away but didn't dare take her child with her, she might have put the child with a relative of the family, and that they might, anxious to hide the child, have said the wrong age.
It could be. Whether the boy is, that's a 4 or 5 years difference in ages to hide, but if the child wasn't around, how would the census taker know?
Would Chloe have run off, leaving her child with another member of the family? I enlisted the help of Professor Janet Johnson, who knows a great deal about African-American family life.
If the father of the child was coming to get the child, she would hide. That's a typical thing she would do. She could also change her name.
Right.
That was not unusual at all.
So
because they love their children, even though their children were mulattoes, and some look nothing like them, look more like the father.
Right. So the important thing was to keep the family together, to keep the child,
baby,
keep her baby.
Her baby, yes.
Right. Okay. What about putting the child with an extended family?
Extended families are very big in the black community even today.
Yes.
But usually it's done with a grandmother, if a grandmother is there available. If not a grandmother, it could be a sister. It could be a sister, but somebody that they could trust.
So there seemed a strong likelihood that Frederick W. Baker could be the lost child of Delius and Chloe. I tracked him down through the census records and town directories, which showed that by 1920, at the time when Delius was gaining recognition in Europe, Frederick had become a railway labourer in St. Augustine. Just as you said that, I've just seen this.
Oh.
We found Frederick W. Baker. We found him through the 20s and the 30s. He's living in an area which is round about Christopher Street, and he also lived in houses on Live Oak Street. We've traced him until 1934. He seems to have had a wife, but it looks like it's his second wife, Emma Baker. There's evidence of her living in this area until 1940. But then in the 1945 directory, there isn't anything. The trail runs cold.
You've done well. You've brought us into a time period now that we may still find people that are alive that can talk to us. What you've developed now is you've got the potential for looking at death certificates. We have the potential for looking at birth certificates. And we also have the potential, with you saying about the second wife, that we may be looking for a divorce. In the meantime, we want you to go to St. Augustine, beat the streets, and find some people that can tell you about history.
We know of a Frederick W. Baker who had a first wife called Bertha, and maybe she died because he had a second wife called Emma. And they lived in this area. They lived around Christopher Street and around Live Oak Street.
Well, I knew the Bakers lived on Live Oak Street. That was Emma Baker.
Did you know Emma Baker?
I know Emma Baker.
Really?
Well, it's so interesting because it was right in this area.
Yeah, that's what the Bakers, they lived on this spot.
Right
With
here.
this, two-story building, but it got burnt down.
Oh, okay, okay,
down.
Did you know Emma
Emma Baker?
Oh, that's a different set.
That's a different set. Okay, you're not related at all. Okay, okay. Tell us now, you are Emma's daughter, right?
Baby daughter.
Baby daughter. She had 2 girls.
Was your father called Frederick?
That was my sister's father.
That was your sister's father.
She's dead.
All right. Okay. Sorry, we've been looking for a long time, so
excited about
it's sort of exciting.
Yeah,
So at last I had found someone who was directly related. Her half-sister Inez would have been Delius's granddaughter.
Yes.
And how much older is Inez than you?
We was 12 and a half years apart.
Okay, so
I told my mom, I said, you must have forgot about me.
Inez's father, Frederick W. Baker, died in 1934, the same year that Delius died. My search had taken me a lot further than I ever dreamed possible. I'm now convinced that Frederick W. Baker was Delius's long-lost son, and that Chloe Baker, who lived at Racy Point, was the girl who inspired so much of Delius's music. But what matters most to me is that my experience in Florida will always affect the way I play the music of Frederick Delius.